Alright guys, let's get started. Alright. Get to listen to this, yeah, ignore chat on screen. It's always hard to get perfect. Anyway, let's get started here. Spoiler free, yeah. You guys, as always, are very good about this type of stuff. And as for spoiler free, we have sheets and sheets and sheets worth of work to verify that. Yeah, what it's. They're done. Okay, so music rating. Music's not bad for the Master System. Some of the music's actually pretty charming. Again, only problem that I find with it is that there's a lack of tracks. A lack of tracks that you actually get to listen to. You've got a battle track that's really short. It's one of the few battle tracks that you hear in the game. You hear the same dungeon theme for like the first 90% of the game until you start getting to later dungeons. The overworld themes and stuff like that are the same. You don't get vehicles until really late and things like that as well, so really I feel like the music was lacking. If we do put it up against games that came out around the same time, specifically Final Fantasy had a crap ton of different tracks that play throughout the game. I feel like it was lacking in that regard, but what was there was good. It was solid for the system and the era, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6. Graphics rating for the era. You know, the game looked pretty good for coming out in 1988. I mean, it's hard to really judge something like that. Putting it up against other RPGs of the time and things like that, it's pretty good. It's just, I'm not a huge fan of this, like, maze type design. I feel like that actually takes away from the aesthetics, and maybe it's actually more difficult to program. Or maybe it was more difficult to actually pull off and make look good. I'm not that knowledgeable of actually what goes into something like that. But for what it was, it looked good. And we gotta give it credit there. And actually, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna go ahead and give the music for that a 7. I was like 6.5 in my mind, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it up to a 7. Story rating. This is gonna be hard to do. Should I rate it on its story itself, or should I rate it on its story for the era? That's something that I really have to get into. I feel like I really have to give context to where the game came from, and it has more story than most games did around that time frame. So it has to have credit there. As for where to go and things like that, I'd say that this game was a little bit more difficult than some of the other RPGs out around the same time because you weren't really limited to where you were going, and the cryptic steps to actually progress forward were even worse because you had so many different places that you could go. Then there was arbitrary triggers that made things like chests or particular characters appear to talk to and progress the game. And you would really never know. You could have checked a place 500 million times and it wouldn't have mattered because you just didn't do one thing that you needed to do first. Which happens in games sometimes, but since you have so many options, you never really know. But in all truth and honesty, like, it has good story for when the game came out. I still think I prefer some of the other games that came out around then. Specifically, like, I feel Final Fantasy had a little bit more story, even though it didn't have, like, actual built characters and things like that. But this has to be one of the first RPGs on a system that had unique characters, and it gets credit there as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and give that a 7 as well. And, like, I want to keep this list as accurate as possible to, like, how I feel about the games, but I also want to give it credit to the era, and I think I've tried to do that for pretty much everything, especially graphics. Mechanics rating. The battle system was simple. There was nothing too special about it. Without reading the manual, you really wouldn't have known what the spells do, but that's pretty, you know, normal for that old of a game and things like that. Progressing through the dungeons was monotonous, and having to draw the things and stuff like that was it gets time consuming. It's interesting for a while, but when you start seeing like some of the same types of designs and stuff like that, it gets a little old. The trap holes were incredibly annoying. They were completely disorientating, and it made it very difficult to do what you were trying to do throughout the game. If it's to take it slow, to map everything, to progress, and then to get to something that completely shuts you down where you're at, you've got two options. Start drawing the map from there, hoping it connects at some point, hoping you can figure out where you were and try to attach it to that other aspect of the map, or just warp out, start the dungeon from scratch again, and then avoid that pitfall. In most cases, the pitfalls led you to absolutely nothing, so exploring in those areas was kind of pointless. Also, the amount of chests that were traps in the game was just a little ridiculous. I think one of the dungeons that I was in, there was 2 chests that were actual items. One of them was 20 Meseta, one of them was a burger, and the rest of them were just damage-dealing chests. So again, why search? If I find the way to go, if I progress and go the way I need to go, why would I search to try and find any cool, unique items or anything like that? So I kind of feel like it was their goal to make this game as long as possible in some aspects, by forcing you in and out of the dungeon multiple times, which I guess was their, keeping the game a little bit longer if they could. But for most people, and especially nowadays, I guarantee most of those people actually play with a guide of some kind, or at the very least maps. So of course they're not going to experience that. They're not going to have nearly as much trouble as it is to like go through and do everything by yourself. I mean, it's a completely different story trying to figure out all the plot triggers yourself, and not only figuring out all the plot triggers yourself, but also mapping out everything. And you start to feel it a little bit more. And for that sake, like I said, for its time it's good, but it definitely hasn't aged well at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and give the mechanics a 5. I'm not really a huge fan, as I said, of this type of system to begin with, but I feel like later instances of this type of system are going to be incorporated a lot better. And that's good, and that's fine. But as for RPGs of the time and stuff like that, these mechanics really aren't on par for what I enjoy normally, or what I did enjoy around that time frame. Grinding. I did a lot of grinding early. I fought nearly every single battle and every dungeon for the longest time until I started running out of resources or was close to dying. So it got to a point where I'd say about maybe 65% of the way through the game, I started fighting less battles, ones that I knew I could finish fairly quickly, get decent experience and money from, without taking too much hit to my HP or my magic. And then I eventually got to a point where stuff just took too long, and it was kind of RNG as to whether I would take damage or not. So sometimes I would take maybe 5-10 damage killing 2 enemies at 120 HP, or I could take 150 damage and one of my characters dies instantaneously. So it's really hard to want to risk doing something like that when I have no means of like reviving my characters, and even if I did, it would be using way too much resources. So I'm going to say that you did have to do quite a bit of grinding. Based on what people are telling me, and I don't know how accurate it is, I'd have to do some research of it myself. The enemies scale with you. I don't know if that attaches to the bosses as well. So I was kind of against grinding, because although I felt the game scale up, all the bosses up until that final boss were not difficult if I had the resources available to me. If I would have gotten to that air castle boss and had my resources, if I would have known that that was going to be a thing, 2 dungeons, one right after the other without any type of rest, I would have played it completely differently. I would have played it slower. After I created the maps, I would have left, I would have came back in. But it was too late after that. Before I realized that that was going to be a thing, it was too late, and I put myself in a position that I had very limited resources, and I made it far more difficult on myself at that point. Yes. But if I would have gotten there with even slightly more magic on one character or anything else, that boss would have been incredibly easy. It's not that he was difficult. And honestly, what made the final boss there difficult was not knowing how much damage I was doing. If I was doing very limited damage with my physical attacks, it makes sense that I wasn't killing. Which is awkward, because I was doing anywhere from, again, 1 to, 30, 35 damage with both my main physical attackers. Even the cat was doing anywhere from 15 to 20 to 30 damage. So if I was landing a hit, I was kind of counting it as being that. But it must have been like 2s and 3s I was hitting the boss with. Magic was definitely the more consistent way to go. But that being said, I feel like grinding is somewhat necessary to be able to go through this game. At some point, I feel you have to grind. And you have to grind for money, because there's items you do have to buy. You're going to get into a lot of encounters that you either choose to run away from or not, and you have to grind through the dungeons if you're trying to play through it normally, if you're not following a guide. So yes, there is an awful lot of grinding in this game, which is very common for old school games like this. But that being said, it's still going to get a low number for grinding. I'm going to go ahead and give that a 3. So my overall rating, this really isn't a bad game. It's pretty solid overall. I enjoyed aspects of it. The mapping was fun for a while. It got old after a while. It started to hurt my wrist even. But the thing that made it difficult to enjoy was that I would literally map out an area that would be 5-6 pages of graphing paper, maybe get one item out of it, and I didn't know whether that item was going to help me progress through the game or anything else. And then I would leave, and then I'd take maybe 15 steps outside, and then I was in another dungeon again where I had to map out and potentially got another item that I, again, had no idea what it did. So the pacing and stuff like that was really off, but since it was such an old game, it doesn't really matter. People want to win the raffle, man. So I'm going to go ahead and give the game a solid 5. I mean, I feel like there was better games, better RPGs that came out for the time. And then I'm going to bump it up ever so slightly because I love the fact that this is the first game that has personality characters. So in all, I'd say I'd give it a 5.5 going on a 6, and I'm just going to go ahead and round that up to a 6. So let me see what you guys rated. Hopefully you voted. I'll go ahead and do the math on that. Will I replay this? Not likely. And what's today? 2nd of December. And it took us... Where's my timer? 25 hours, 8 minutes, and 29 seconds. Alright. Let's see here. Results. We got 13 votes. I'm gonna grab the calculator and make it easy on myself. And thank you guys for taking the time to vote. I really appreciate that. And you guys gave it about a 6.5. So pretty on par with how I felt about it altogether. Like I said, there are aspects of it that I really liked and I would have loved, especially as a kid, but the game definitely did not age well. But I know you guys are getting sick of hearing me talk now, so let's go ahead and get the raffle started. Give me another minute or two, maybe a little bit less, and we'll be ready to go. Alright. We should be good. Alright guys, if you want to enter the raffle, all you have to do is enter the word raffle. Anyone that types in the word raffle has a chance of winning and picking the next game that I play. That's all you have to do. Everyone has an equal chance of winning. I'll do my best to try and make sure everyone that said the word raffle actually is entered. And I'm not letting Nightbot enter yet and doing that whole type of thing. Maybe I'll wait till around 50 games or so to do that, or at the very least I need to work on the list a little bit more. I only have 3 games out of the 5 that I was going to pick. But again, those of you that are new to the stream, everyone that came from all the hosts and everything that we got tonight, all the awesome raids and things like that, again, it is my goal to beat every JRPG. That's a lot of JRPGs. I'm sure there's one in my list that you've heard of, one that you potentially enjoy, and one that you might want to see me play. So even if you're the type of person that tends to lurk and stuff like that, I know I am, I highly recommend just typing in the word raffle. I mean, you've got just as much of a chance to win as everyone else. It's a lot of fun. It lets you kind of interact with me in a different way by giving me something to do, something to play, and hopefully something that makes you want to stop by more and enjoy your time here. which of course I would appreciate. It was fun tonight, after all the raids and stuff like that. Even though I was in super serious mode and things like that, you guys kept me down to earth and everything else, and I really appreciate that. So I'll give you guys about another 2 minutes or so here. Again, if you do want to enter, you have to type in the word Raffle. You can't type baffle and stuff like that. So Tyler, if you did want to enter, go ahead. Yes, there have been people that have won multiple times, but there's also been people that have been here for 1 day and won. It's all up to your luck. I'm sure there's something on the list that you would like. A quaffle. Enter, Tyler. You might win. Why not? Alright guys, another 30 seconds or so. If you haven't entered, I highly recommend you do so. Alright, looks like the only person we don't have in here is Nakurti, and I don't think he typed the word Raffle, so... Alright guys, thank you for sticking around with me, thank you for being here for the long stream. Good luck, everyone. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Uh-oh. I think I know what game I'm playing. Are you seriously gonna make me play Quest 64, Surain? Is that the game? He's been talking about it for almost half a year. I'm kind of cringing. We'll see what it is. I think at this point, other than Rio, all of my mods have won at least once. Oh, I'll have to play it eventually. It's just, I'm curious to see. He's been joking about it this entire time. Alright. Alright, Quest 64 it is. I will have to make sure that I get the N64 emulator and stuff like that ready. It'll be a while before we actually beat Final Fantasy 15, I'm sure. But I'll make sure that is ready to go. And maybe I'll be able to beat it this time. I played it a long time ago. Zandok, thank you so much for the bits. Thank you for filling the chest up to the brim. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for me. That was a way longer stream than I expected to do tonight, and that's kind of where my stubbornness shines in a little bit. But thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for all the support tonight. You guys are amazing. You really are. Alright. Let me find somebody to host you guys with. Hopefully I can find somebody that you would enjoy watching. I know a lot of you are here for RPGs, so I'll tell you what. I'm going to host someone named Heroine DP. She's actually the person that created that awesome icon that you see up at the top left there, the Grand JRPG Tour logo, basically. That's a whole bunch of my favorite characters right there. That was a commission from her. She's very talented. If you have any stuff that you need done for streaming or anything like that, or if you just like artwork and things like that, and you want to reach out to her and have something done, I highly recommend it. But that being said, she also does speedruns and things like that as well, and she's currently doing Shining Force. So let's go ahead and stop by and say hi, and show her some love. What do you guys say? Alright, thanks again, everybody. I will be back later today, probably. If not, definitely tomorrow. And we'll start some Final Fantasy 15. Have a great night, and have a great start to your weekend.